I am glad to have you here. Today's webinar is about demystifying MBA application essays. So as you create and complete your application essays over the next 2 months for the round 2 deadlines, there are some important things to keep in mind. I will be talking through some of the things you should be doing and some of the things that you can avoid for your application essays. I'm also going to be talking about some other key points to consider as you develop your MBA applications. For those of you who are wondering, yes, this session is being recorded and will be sent to you in the coming days. It will also be on our YouTube channel. So first, before we begin, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Laura Nelson. I have a BFA from Carnegie Mellon University, where I studied art, and I'm also a full-time graduate of the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. I was a member of the admissions committee there in my second year. Before business school, I worked in film and television, and I had a very nonlinear path going into business school and, of course, coming out of school as well. Following graduation, I entered the tech industry, and for the past decade, I've held general management roles, VP of marketing roles, and fractional exec roles for software companies. My last 2 companies exited through acquisition. I've been an MBA admissions consultant, though, for 15 years with 2 of the top consulting firms and now with Target Test Prep. I've steered hundreds of MBA clients to top programs, and I'm also a member of AGAC, which is the Association for International Graduate Admissions Consultants. And that gives me access to admissions committees at top programs and career offices as well. So over the last 15 years, I've worked on almost every program imaginable, including part-time, full-time, online executive, and dual degree applications at top programs like these, along with many others that are not on this slide. So now that you've learned a little bit about me, I'd love to learn more about you. So in the chat, could you tell me when you are planning to apply for an MBA and what your target programs are? It'd be great just to see, who's here and what you are pursuing. And if I can cater this to you in any way, I will do my best. Thanks again for coming. And I'll give you a second to use the chat and feel free to share whatever you want. We've got a quiet group tonight, but I do know sometimes it takes a while for the chat to populate. So as you're doing that, you may be well aware already that the MBA application process is long, daunting, and complex. So the road to submitting your applications is anything but straight. It looks like we have a mix of candidates here. This is great. As the chat populates, I see round 2, Kellogg, Darden, Ross, HBS, weekend part-time programs, great. I see a candidate applying next year. You're getting a head start on things. Another round 2 joint degree, someone aiming for programs in Europe, which is great. Another round 2, Owen, Darden, Columbia. So nice mix here of programs, of geographies, of timelines as well. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. As you're working through the process, you know that there are so many components to applying for an MBA, and there's so many things that you need to get right. This is a tough process to face alone, right? And I wouldn't really recommend it. The highly competitive MBA application process requires a lot of introspection, reflection, communication, and a high degree of EQ, among other things. So my job here today is really just to help you more effectively understand one of these components, which is your MBA application essays. So with that in mind, let's dive into today's agenda. Here are the things that I plan to talk about tonight. So first, I'm going to talk about why essays are important to your MBA applications. Then I'm going to cover a few common mistakes to avoid in your application essays. If you're applying in round 2, you're probably deep in the essay writing process. However, if you haven't started yet, it's not too late. I've got you covered. with these tips. Third, I am going to review essay prompts from 3 top MBA programs and provide my analyses so that you can tackle these effectively. We'll be covering Harvard, Stanford, and Kellogg in this section. After that, I will review our pre-submission checklist. So if you are applying in round 2, especially for those deadlines in January, these steps are critical. And then finally, I'm going to leave some time at the end for Q&A. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat as we go along, but in case I miss your question, I will respond at the end. So, keep those questions warm. Don't feel free to answer it again if I miss it during this session. So first, let's tackle the essays. Why write essays? Why are essays important? Before we talk about those common mistakes and tips, it's critical to understand why MBA applications require candidates to write the essays. And in developing essays and evaluating them as part of the process, the MBA Admissions Committee really seeks to understand answers to key questions. So these include, first, who are you beyond your resume, right? And beyond that, what are your lived experiences? Who are you outside of your professional career? And how do you spend your time? What are you passionate about? Next thing they want to know is how you've tackled various types of situations. How do you react under stress? What have you learned from failure? What kind of leader are you? And more. Third, they want to know how you communicate in writing. So written communication, it's a critical skill for business. Can you communicate your ideas clearly and succinctly? Can you get a point across? Can you drive influence? Fourth, they want to know what you're going to gain from the MBA experience and why you need it. So this isn't always clear through other application materials, and the MBA Admissions Committee wants to know that you've really thought this through. So as you know, the MBA is a huge investment in terms of time and money, and these programs want to make sure that you are successful. And then fifth, last but not least, they want to understand what you're going to bring to the MBA cohort. So MBA programs are invested in building a diverse and interesting cohort, not just in terms of background and nationality, but also in terms of perspectives, interests, experiences, and more. So the essays are where your differentiated perspectives and experiences can really shine. So for now, now that we've gained an understanding of why the essays are an important component to your MBA applications, let's take a look at what not to do as you approach your application essays. I'm going to talk about those common mistakes to avoid. And I've seen many of them across my 15 years of doing this, but I'm going to distill them into the top 3 things that I see. And the first one is in regards to your career goals. So it is a huge mistake if your career goals are vague or unrealistic. MBA admissions committees ask about your career goals in short answer and essay questions because they want to set you up for success after you graduate from the program. So after all, unless you're a sponsored candidate, the goal is to get a job. Whether you're seeking an MBA to accelerate the career path you're on or you're switching to a new career altogether. If your career goals are vague or unrealistic, the admissions committee will question whether you have done the right preparation for the degree program, and your overall application just won't build confidence. So you really need to make sure that your career goals are specific and realistic. So an example of a non-specific goal is that you want to go into finance. The reality is that finance is a broad industry. So do you want to go into investment banking, private equity, or asset management, or something like corporate finance? You really need to get specific with the area of finance you want to pursue and name a couple target companies. An example of an unrealistic goal. This would be something like going from being an artist to an investment banker without any track record in quant subjects or analysis. right? That is a huge leap. So you need to make sure that some of the elements of your past career will transfer into your new career. That is the topic of career goals, and this finds its way into many of the applications that you will encounter in some form or fashion. So number two, I'm going to talk about the fit with the program. So not all MBA programs ask about this, but for the ones that do, your response needs to be on point. So some MBA programs ask very specific questions about why you want to attend that program and how the program will progress your professional and your personal goals. And often MBA programs will ask you what you intend to contribute to the cohort. So it's critical that you gain an understanding of each MBA program that you're applying to, their academic offerings or initiatives and their unique cultures, to tailor your response accordingly to questions that ask about this. So your response for a program like Wharton is going to be different than it would be for a program like Haas, for example. So you really need to do your homework and make sure your responses are tailored to that program and that program only. So mistake number 3. This relates to your understanding of the essay prompt and answering the right question. So common mistake is that folks are answering the wrong question. So for example, some MBA short answers and essay prompts ask candidates more than one thing. But some candidates have blinders on, right? They're in a rush and sometimes they glaze over the full question, or they're answering the question that they want to be asked. And if a question asks about your short-term and long-term goals, you have to provide the admissions committee with that full picture, right? Don't just answer one of those questions. If the question asks what you hope to get out of the program and what you intend to contribute, make sure that you're addressing both parts. There are a lot of opportunities to overlook what you're being asked in these complex applications. And the number one reason that people fail to answer the right question is because they're rushing and they're submitting at the last minute. But you guys are on point. We still have a couple months until those round 2 deadlines occur. So I know that you guys are not going to make these mistakes. So give yourself and your candidacy the best shot and allocate plenty of time for this part of the process so that you can avoid these easy mistakes. I'll pause here. Any questions about these 3 common mistakes? Feel free to use the chat. Okay, I will move on. Move on to the essay analyses that I mentioned. So I touched on the 3 most common mistakes I see in MBA essays. I want to take a closer look at some of the most challenging ones to write. And we're going to look for a few different programs. I will caveat this section by saying this is very generalized advice for how to think about these particular essays and programs, and everyone's individual situation will be different. So that's where an MBA admissions consultant can work hand in hand with you and be really helpful in guiding you to shape your own unique stories. So what follows is just meant to help you understand what the program's asking and help you think through your approach for some of these core essays. So I'm going to start with HBS, and these are new questions for this year. So in past years, you had 900 words to tell admissions what they should know about you and your candidacy. This year, though, HBS has broken down what many candidates were already telling the admissions committee into more manageable sections. They include the business-minded essay, the leadership-focused essay, and the growth-oriented essay. So you can see them here on the screen. I won't read them out loud, but take note, you only have a limit of 800 total words here to get these points across, rather than the 900 from years past. So let's take a closer look at each of these. Now, first, we're going to start with the business-minded essay. If we're going to break this down, the prompt is simply asking you to reflect on how your experiences have inspired your career choices and your future goals. So take note of one thing in the prompt here. It does not limit you to discuss professional experiences. It simply mentions experiences. So ask yourself, what has shaped my career goals professionally or otherwise? And how have these experiences influenced what I want to do in the future? The second part of the question is about impact. And note, this is not just on a company, but also mentions organizations and communities. So here you want to ask yourself what impact you want to make and who is going to be affected by that. For example, besides the company or organization you're working in, what other stakeholders will have an impact on, or what other stakeholders will you have an impact on in the future? All right, so that's the business-minded essay, a lot to unpack there. Second, let's talk about the leadership-focused essay for HBS. This prompt is asking what experiences have shaped who you are, how you invest in others, and what kind of leader you want to become. So take note, like the prior essay, this prompt does not limit you to discussing professional experiences, though they can be included. The HBS admissions committee wants to understand who you are as a person, how did you come to be, and really inspires you to consider your role in the world and how you help others. How should that show up in this essay? Think about the leader you'd like to become, both in the workplace and in life, and how this was shaped. I will note that both the business-minded and leadership-focused essays that we've covered so far, they're really difficult. There's not a lot of word count to play around with here, and you don't have room to tell your stories from end to end. You have to give the admissions committee a taste of the variety of experiences you've had and tie them together, and this is a really difficult task. Third essay, this is about growth, curiosity, and this can manifest itself in any area of your life. So here's a few tips to keep in mind. This should be about one example, not many. You don't have enough words to tell several stories, so stick to what the prompt is asking and talk about one. Next, you don't need to limit yourself to a professional example here either. Curiosity can take shape in any area of your life. And finally, it's critical that this example showcases some sort of growth. That's where the learning comes in. And it could be centered on a failure, and I know that's scary, but many MBA candidates shy away from sharing failures, but this is where learning and transformation comes in, and your curiosity may have very well led you to a failure. So don't hesitate to lean into that if you've got a great example to share here. So again, this is not easy to tackle in the word count we're given here, and that's one aspect that makes HBS one of the more difficult applications to tackle, in addition to it being one of the most competitive programs as well. But I've had a lot of fun working on these with my clients, and I'm curious to hear how they shape up for you for round 2. So that's HBS, and I know that is a mouthful. But speaking of mouthfuls, we're going to talk about Stanford next. Let's shift gears. These are long-standing essay questions for Stanford. They ask for essay A, what matters most to you and why? And then essay B, why Stanford? So it seems easy enough, right? However, Stanford is one of the most difficult applications to master, and I'm really tackling the tough ones tonight. So let's dig into essay A a little more. Here are a few core things to keep in mind as you tackle this essay, what matters most to you. First, consider your core themes in life. These will likely extend beyond your professional career. And I mention themes, plural, because you really are the sum of your experiences rather than on a single track of experiences. A lot of candidates come to me and try to wrap this essay up in a bow with a single theme, but don't force it. You are painting a picture for Stanford's admissions committee with numerous colors, so really don't be afraid to share all the colors of your palette. That is to say, your various life experiences. This does not mean that you should be talking about 10 things, but rather a tight set of core themes that are important to you. The next point, and I know this is a hard one, but avoid trying to tell the admissions committee what you think they want to hear. And this is true of many of the essay topics that we're going to discuss, and true of this MBA essay writing process in general, but it's important to remember for Stanford too. Please don't say what the most important thing to you is, helping people, if you are not dedicating your life to a really important human-related cause. And if you are, you can get a lot more specific in articulating how you help people by talking about what problems you solve and how that drives your satisfaction instead. The third point is support your themes with specific examples from your life. And again, this is transferable to many of the other MBA application essays. So along the lines of helping people, I've had candidates come to me with this goal in mind, but no real experience to back it up. So if helping people or building diverse teams and communities is important to you, please share substantive experience to back this up. This is what the admissions committee needs. They want authentic responses to this question and not to be pandered to. So these examples are crucial. Good question from the chat. Should you stick to 3 or less core themes given the brevity of response limit or the word count limit here? I do like things in 3s personally. If that makes if you have 3 strong themes, for example, and you have a kind of balanced approach here, 3 might be your magic number. I think it's more challenging to do this in 5, right? So I think 3 is a great place to start and see how that fleshes out in your draft of your essay. But good question here. Let's talk about essay B. Why Stanford? So a keyword in this question is aspirations. And I want you to think holistically about aspirations beyond simply a job that you want to attain. So Stanford, this program attracts dreamers, innovators, and people who are going to make an impact in their respective companies and in their communities. So what are your aspirations? When you discuss your case for attending Stanford, you've got to be specific, right? Discuss the curriculum, programming, environment, culture, extracurriculars, the location, etc. All of those things that are going to help you realize these aspirations. So again, this is a really tough application, and I didn't even cover the optional essays here, but I do think you should answer them. Hopefully, though, this is potentially a fun exercise too. I know it really depends on the candidate, but again, really challenging for one of the most competitive programs there is. Finally, I'm going to touch on Kellogg. I'm going to talk about these brand new essays for this year. And you can see the verbiage here for questions 1 and questions 2. So question 1 is essentially asking why MBA? What is your goal? Why now? Why Kellogg? What do you hope to contribute? It's a lot. However, I recommend that you be concise where you can. You've got to connect the dots from your goals and intentions to Kellogg's program. And second, I do not encourage you to just simply write a list of courses, programs, and clubs. You're going to discuss some of them in this essay, but you've got to be selective and you've got to connect them to your goals. So this is not the place for a laundry list of things that you read about on Kellogg's website. I think Kellogg's asking a lot of candidates in this first question, and you don't have the word count to be exhaustive, unfortunately. So you really have to demonstrate that you're focused, you're intentional, and you're a clear communicator. I think question 2 is a little bit more focused. It asks you to describe a professional experience where you made that difficult decision, the role of your values, and the experience, and how this experience rather influenced your leadership style. So here's how you should think about approaching this one. Choose one professional experience. Note that this is not more than one, or another experience that's not professional. And be succinct in your storytelling. So you want to give the reader an understanding of what happened, but you can't chew up all of the word count with your story, because you have to ensure that you address the values and the leadership style portions of the questions. So this is crucial, and this is a common mistake that people will just like gloss this over or miss it altogether, but definitely allocate enough space so that you are addressing this crucial part of the question and really like stepping back and reflecting on the experience. So Kellogg, really challenging, and they're asking for a lot in not a lot of words. Stepping back again, I'm sharing this slide about the goals of the application essays, just so you can remember these objectives. That MBA admissions committee wants to learn more about you, how you operate, and how you think, and how your perspectives have been shaped within your career, but also outside of your career. So make sure that your essay responses align with these objectives. I'll pause here. I know that was a lot, and I only touched on 3 schools, but any questions about these programs or tackling your essays in general? So as you think about that, and of course I'll circle back to Q&A at the end, I am next going to go into our pre-submission checklist, and this will be critical here, especially for you guys who are applying in round 2, coming up in a couple months. There are 5 steps here that I recommend you run through before hitting submit on your application. There's nothing worse than submitting, then reviewing your application proof, and then seeing a huge typo or a huge mistake in your resume or in one of your essays. So I'm going to go through the 5 steps, and hopefully these will help you avoid mistakes that can easily be spotted and fixed. So the first step here, I recommend that you proofread your full application with fresh eyes. If you can, do this more than one time. This requires you to finish your application before the day it's due, right? I know a lot of people are rushing at the end, but you'll have so much peace of mind if you can, finish it a few days beforehand, because, you get to proofread your application with fresh eyes and catch something, completely glaring you might have missed before. So you revisit everything. You can ensure that grammar and spelling and the other mistakes I mentioned are avoided and addressed, right? Along the lines here, I mentioned a lot of people are submitting at the last minute. Sometimes these application platforms crash. So you don't want that last minute rush pushing your application in round 3 either. Next tip is to read your essays out loud. And I know this sounds incredibly cheesy, but the MBA admissions committees really want to hear how you communicate in the written word, verbally on a day-to-day basis. And by reading something out loud, you can more effectively identify, verbiage, phrasings, anything that doesn't make sense and that might come off awkwardly. A lot of people read things in their heads as they read written materials. So, keep that in mind, right? Like if it sounds really awkward when you're saying it out loud, it's going to sound awkward to that reader as well. So if you're using a lot of $5 and $10 words, scale it back. You do not need to be over the top with your verbiage. Write how you would talk. Next, your recommendations. This sounds really basic, but this is a peace of mind step. So confirm that your recommender or recommenders have submitted them. They might have given you a heads up, but if not, double check. You might get those confirmations from the programs and through the portal too, so be sure to check that. The reason I bring this up is the same risk if the application portal crashes. If your recommendation's not received in time, your application can be pushed into the next round. And I'm telling you, with round 2, you want to make that deadline. You do not want to be pushed to later because the bulk of the applications are coming in round 1 and round 2, and there are many fewer spots in round 3 for many of the top programs. Next crucial step is to review social media accounts, especially your LinkedIn profile. Make sure there's nothing crazy that you don't want the admissions committee to see. So social media is fair game, especially LinkedIn, because many programs ask for your LinkedIn profile in the application. So make sure that your professional experience section tells the same story that your resume does. And I'm not saying that you have to include the same bullet points, and there's a benefit to leaving your bullet points off of LinkedIn, but at least make sure the dates and the positions and the companies are in sync with what you have on your resume. I think it's also helpful to Google yourself and make sure you can take control of what's on there. If there are egregious posts from social media or elsewhere, admissions is going to find them as part of their background check. So, they partner with companies. Once you accept their offer of admission, they're going to run that background check. And if, you have some crazy things out there, or, you have a history that you did not discuss in your application, they are going to find it. And, if you weren't truthful in your application, they might rescind their offer. So, just be aware of what's out there about you online and take control of what you can. The final step in my pre-submission checklist is to get a second opinion on your application. So you can do this in a few different ways. First, you can enlist a friend or family member to review your application, ensure that your stories come across in a logical and authentic way. One thing I'll caution here is that if your reader isn't well-versed in the MBA admissions process, they might derail your entire application. So direct that person, if they're not familiar, to check for logic and grammar. Second, you can also enlist one of Target Test Prep's experienced admissions consultants to give your application a read and provide detailed feedback. So we are here to help you. And you still have time to do this for the January deadlines. So if you are thinking about this, definitely take action soon. I will have more details about that on the last slide. But either course is going to help you find errors, going to help you avoid some of these common mistakes, and ideally help you put your best foot forward in the MBA admissions process. So with that, I am going to shift over to Q&A, but before I do that, I want to make sure that you have full knowledge of Target Test Prep's products and services. So if you are familiar with our test prep products, you might know that you can try us for 5 days for free. Many of you might already be through this process, which is great. But, if you want to recommend our platform to others, they can check us out for 5 days free. It's not just the GMAT, but also the GRE and EA tests. So we offer a full suite. We offer a full suite of options to help with your test prep, but also with your application materials too. So that includes all of the services on this slide that's going to help you optimize and improve your chances for admission to top MBA programs. So I know this is a bit rushed through on the services, but I do have a link on this slide if you want to check that out. That is the /admissions link. And I want to take time to shift over to Q&A. You have my contact information here too, if you'd want to talk one-on-one about your MBA application strategy. We do offer a free one-on-one profile review. So if that would be useful for you, feel free to reach out. We also have an awesome promo going on, and this is available for package and hourly services. So you can use Flash 20 to get 20% off any of our offerings. So I will pause here and let you take the floor. Please feel free to use the chat, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have for the next few minutes.